afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm usually saying good morning. It's afternoon here in the city of Philadelphia. Another fine Wednesday afternoon. Another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson. He, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. We've got what I think is a great show for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about homelessness. And and the city of Philadelphia and how we're dealing and or not dealing with homelessness. We're gonna be talking about Josh Kruger, the TWU 234 SETPA strike possibility, the Philadelphia Police Department and its misconduct spending. And the 20K lectern. I don't know. I tossed that in there because I think it's funny. And a great example of how governments tend to spend money, overspend money in some cases, and they do it without even thinking, really, sometimes. And so it's I don't know. We'll get into it. We've got a great guest for you. Mike will be on screen in a moment. Playwright of I'm Harvey Milk, and let me bring Mike on screen now. Looks like I'm all set over there. Great. And Mike, welcome to Coffee Break Chat. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
My name's Mike Broemmel. My pronouns are he, him. I am a writer. A great deal of what I do write is plays. I write scripts for plays. I guess on my tax return, more often than not, I write Playwright. And I've been writing plays for about 20 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That can either be a long or a short career in playwriting, I've
it's
found.
both. It's both.
um, one of the memes that I saw associated with the writers' strike, especially as it wrapped up, is like what was it exactly? Yeah, you really should have chosen your opponent more carefully. Who can spend the most time doing nothing without getting paid for it? Writers or
Yes,
producers? Um,
I saw that.
I mean, I'm a
And
producer.
writers do have a leg up on that.
Yeah, I think one of my writer friends is always talking about how she feels like she's not doing anything. I'm a producer. Cards on the table. I'm a producer, so I wasn't rooting for the producers, but also I produce things, so it's a lot both harder and easier to be a producer. Um, I was just in a meeting this morning. The reason why we didn't go live at 10, we're going live at 2 instead, is because I went to an event this morning and I got the chance to meet in person a person who I've been trying to get in a face-to-face interview
Mhm.
for literally 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been trying to get this person to be part of this documentary on tiny homes for 4 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
she's just completely ignored my associate producer and keeps passing the buck. And I cornered her at this meeting, and I was like, "Look, I'm not a scary person. I'm trying to do something good here."
Yeah. Good for you for finding our corner. Good for you. Congratulations on
Thank you, thank you.
that.
Yeah, I mean so yeah, producing has its challenges,
Yeah.
but it can be fun too. So you have a piece that is I'm Harvey Milk in production, or is it? I see from the promo image that you sent us that it is going to be on stage.
Yeah, it's been in production for well, since it premiered in June in Colorado in a number of different communities, including Denver and Aurora, the capital city metro area. And it's going to be at Theater Row later this month as part of a play festival. So this is a continuation of its production. Hopefully it's going to be in production, for a number of years. And the actor, a gentleman named Ben Beasley, is just absolutely extraordinary. And I feel I'll plug the producer as well, in fairness. The play is produced by a company called Tints, Theater in Non-Traditional Spaces. So while the New York performance is in a traditional theater, the play is also created in a manner that it can be in schools and anywhere virtually. And then the play is directed by a gentleman named Greg West, who has a tremendous amount of experience in all aspects of theater and is just one heck of a director. He really brought all of those folks I just mentioned. And Jennifer Dempsey's the executive producer. I feel like I'm at one of those award ceremonies running on and forgets one. Can't forget Jennifer Dempsey. They're just a really great team of people that really brought this thing alive.
I often I have one guest in particular who's been on the show a couple of times, and they have a habit of name dropping. And one time on the show, I was just like literally like I reached down and I was like, "Here, you drop these." But yeah. It's only fair to name drop. I mean, how long did you work on the script itself? I mean that can.
I probably, I worked on the script about 18 months all told.
Yeah.
The idea of writing about Harvey Milk wasn't my idea initially. It was Jennifer Dempsey, the person who ended up being the executive producer of the play. And she was sitting with the gentleman who actually became the actor playing Harvey Milk. And this was during Pride in Colorado. Oh gosh, a little over 2 years ago now. And they were sitting around a kitchen table talking. And they came up with the idea of doing a play about Harvey Milk. And I feel fortunate that they called me and asked me to write the script because I knew Harvey Milk, of course. I mean, I shouldn't say, of course, because there's certainly a generation of people that might not be as aware of Harvey Milk as people in my age group. But it was really a learning experience. It was. I've written about a number of historical figures. There's so many just black and white things out there about Harvey Milk. But that man had one of the most nuanced lives of anyone I've written about. And that made it interesting, fun, sad, the whole gambit of emotion. So it was a good experience writing this play. Writing a script is not always a good experience, but this one was.
Well, yeah, I mean, what a lot of folks don't know, I suppose, or don't understand about writing a play is as far as I mean, I've not written a lot, but I've edited a lot. But even in the editing process, and as far as when I've talked to other writers, it's a lot like having a relationship with your characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your relationship with Harvey Milk like through this writing process? Why write this piece? Why now?
Well, I'll answer the last part first. Why write it now? And I think we're at a point in time in our country and in other countries too, perhaps. I kind of describe it when people have asked me this question. It's the environment today in many places in the country, for many people in the LGBTQ plus community, is rather reminiscent of the 1970s, where folks are starting to face. We're seeing discrimination coming on headstrong again, violence against people in the LGBTQ community. And I described it to some people. I said, and I was born in 1962, so I remember the 70s, but I was still a kid, so it's still kind of a confusing era for me. But it's like folks on the the new Star Trek show, for that matter, shows getting in the beaming system, and poof, they're somewhere else. And in the last couple of years, there was great, marriage equality. And so forth, a lot of advances, and all of a sudden it's just these brick walls are appearing. And for me, it's kind of like it's just popping into a beaming system on Star Trek and ending up back in 1970 something. So that's why I think it's timely, because it reminds people of the 1970s. I don't want to say the early battle for gay LGBT rights, because that really started in different forms a lot earlier than that. But kind of the pinnacle of the start of the modern day movement for LGBTQ equality was at the time of Harvey Milk. So it just seems like his story reminding people of what was going on in the 1970s, not just with Harvey Milk, but across the board with LGBTQ rights and also racial equality, ethnic equality, gender equality. That was really at a brew in the 70s. So that's why I think now is timely. And my relationship with Harvey Milk, I knew Harvey Milk. I'd heard good and bad, and for both sides, there's this one clear divide from all people, different parts of the community and society. I've heard a lot of different comments about Harvey Milk, pro, con, negative, positive, a lot. And like I said, he's a very nuanced character. And so I was kind of like, I know Harvey Milk. I know he got, of course, knew he was assassinated in a very just almost incomprehensible. It's comprehensible only because it happened, but really an incomprehensible incident. And then the Twinkie defense, the perpetrator, the man who assassinated him, mounted, which what has been really significantly shortened to the Twinkie defense, and that's even somewhat of a misnomer. But I was aware of that. I was aware of things like that, but I didn't know. I really didn't know, and I knew some of the impacts of Harvey, but I really didn't know Harvey Milk much beyond the less than a year he was on the board of supervisors in San Francisco. Not very much time. And so for me, Harvey Milk was like meeting a new person in a professional setting that I was kind of like, oh, I don't know much about him. I'm not sure if I want to know, much. I don't know. But then as it progressed, and as I really went from his childhood in New York through his early professional life, he worked for the Barry Goldwater campaign for president. That was a surprise to me. Barry Goldwater kind of being the king of conservatism, but old-fashioned conservatism, certainly not what is called, I don't even recognize that some people that call themselves conservative. But so again, nuanced life. And then I, got to understand better his personal life and its ups, its downs, it was rocky. It was a lot of things with a number of different people and a lot of tragedies throughout his personal life. But also ultimately triumphs. He accomplished a lot when he got to San Francisco in what relatively is a short period of time. I'm not just talking about the very small amount of time he was on the board of supervisors, but the time he was an activist in San Francisco, wasn't really that long, not that much time. And he really accomplished a lot and was able to make alliances that, with the Teamsters, for example, I'm not sure if a lot of people would readily think that a 1970s gay rights activist would be able to form a strong alliance with the Teamsters when it came to advocating for laws that granted at least some level of fairness and equality to the LGBT community. He was able to work with people, everyone from Jimmy Carter, which I think is understandable, but also Ronald Reagan was supportive of some of the things he was doing, which to me was surprising. I wouldn't have guessed that. And so in the end, that's my long-winded answer to get to the point where he started off as being someone that I'm interested in politics on that. But in the end, he became someone that I admired and wished I would have been able to meet in person, because I would have liked to have the guy as a friend. And I don't say that about all the characters I write. But that's definitely how I feel about Harvey.
I mean I think that's a very valuable thing when you find a character, whether a live, an actual person or a character that you're even making up, that you would want
Right.
to, if you want to, as a writer, have that person as a friend, then your audience um will at least have that advantage when they start to experience that character.
I think
Um,
that's right.
yeah. I wanted to touch on something you talked about a little bit, kind of civil rights movement as a whole.
Mhm.
Um, I have a lot of conservative friends. I think, like, one of the interesting things about, like, the country in general, when you really delve into it, there's that alarm. Um, I didn't
Oh,
mute
is
my watch.
the alarm going off now?
Yeah.
I turned off everything that might make a noise in my
My I didn't think about turning off my watch.
I,
So it's 2:19 p.m. Here in Philadelphia, and there's a emergency alert system test going on, and apparently it is set to override um, any opt-outs that you may have. It's the federal level emergency alert system. So, um, and
you know, I'm not to make a bad joke, not to interrupt here, but with the way things are going these days, I'm surprised my toaster isn't going off or
right.
something like
I'm not downstairs, but I'm sure my refrigerator, which is attached to
yeah,
the
it's
internet,
ringing.
is
Yeah,
ringing.
and there you go. Yeah.
And so
I didn't mean to
I
interrupt you.
didn't think to turn off my watch, but there you go. There you have it. We live
Yeah,
in 2023, and now watches will echo the emergency alert for you.
yeah.
At any rate, oh, and there was just an article about Apple's first edition $17,000 all gold Apple Watch. That the special edition Apple Watch is now considered unsupported by Apple. So there you go.
Jeez.
It's a defunct watch
Ay, ay, ay.
that somebody bought for $17,000. A few people.
It's no good anymore. Ay, ay,
Yeah.
ay.
At least, the Samsung watch only costs like a couple hundred. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna talk about the civil rights movement as a whole. I'm a big believer personally in, none of us is free until all of us is free. So
Yeah.
LGBTQ rights are integral to my normal way of thinking, as far as civil rights needs to be applied to everyone, and therefore the LGBTQ plus community needs civil rights as much as any other community. And I don't quite understand the folks that are of my community, either black or mixed ethnicity, who don't think that the LGBTQ community should or deserves special civil rights, or even like the same civil rights as everybody else. That being said, I one of the things that I always get from folks that I know that are quote unquote conservative, like you mentioned, I don't think that name conservative really matches up between the 70s and now, or even really the 80s and now. It's a different animal. It's a different animal, I think, starting with really Reagan, and then really taking a big change with the Tea Party movement.
Yeah.
But yeah, the conservatives that I know, a lot of them are classic conservatives. Mostly having finding fault with not having small government, not enforcing the laws that we have, or not honoring the spirit of the original Constitution, that kind of thing. That kind of conservative often quotes to me, like, that there's a pendulum in um, social circles. There's a pendulum of social movements, and I wonder how, having written this bio of Harvey Milk, did how does that hit you? Like, how do you think of that as a valid position? Like, is there a pendulum, or is there like I often kind of push back on it personally, just because I feel like we should just always make progress. There should just be forward progress, and the quote unquote pendulum would seem to say that all the steps back that we take are valid. I don't think they're valid. I think that maybe we should move to a ratchet system. I don't know.
That might be better. I think that's good. And I hear the pendulum analogy a lot. And then I hear current day conservatives, if that's misusing that term, I think. And we'll say, well, yeah, people of color will have their time again. Members of the LGBT community will have their time again. It's okay. It's going to go back. It's going to come back. It's fine. But you know what? I agree with you. It's just not. It's not what should be happening. And I don't think that's what's happening. The reason I don't think that, because a pendulum is kind of going without resistance. But in the case of uh, people of color, LGBTQ community members, uh, people of different genders, it's not, we don't have our, is that your cat?
Yeah, she's
I have one too, but and he left. So he must not like what I don't know. He walked away, and I didn't discourage him from doing that. And so, it's not the pendulum just freely going. There's some bearing. However that all works, I don't know, but it just goes. And
right.
then I think sometimes you have to rewind the thing in the grandfather.
Well, the thing that bothers me about the analogy is that a pendulum movement is inevitable, I suppose.
It's inevitable, but with the reason why I don't think, adding on to what you said, I don't think the pendulum analogy works, is because it's not just da, da, da. It is people that are actively taking positions against people of color, LGBT community members, people of different genders, gaining rights they deserve. There are people that are active. And so it's not it's people that are swatting the darn thing in a different direction. So I think, and I'm not trying to be hateful, but I think there are people in this country that are actively committed today, in the 70s and the 60s, maybe someday it'll end, to stomping on the rights of people that are not part of their self-identified small circle of folks. And it's and I think the reason the milk plays it's timely now is because that group of people that are intent on stomping on the civil equal rights of others is really intense and really committed right now. And I wrote a play about Medgar Evers' wife, widow. And that play's been running, I don't know, maybe about 6 years. That was a tough play for me to write for a number of reasons. I'm not a person of color, so I know my lane is a little bit limited, but I was able to reach out to a lot of resources and whatever. And I did my job in writing the script and then turned it over to other people that knew more, knew about the experience of living life in the United States and elsewhere in the world as a member of a community of color. And so I got out of the way. But I mentioned it because, so I write a play about Marley Evers, and it starts getting produced. And with some regularity, I get hate email, and that's the thing now, is hate email, not hate mail, email, from white people, that the nicest thing they're saying about me is that I'm a race traitor.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I get hate mail writing the play about Harvey Milk, because they spew out all kinds of negative and actually untrue stuff about milk. So it's my own experience is that group of anti-equality, anti-fairness, people is really riled up right now. I don't want to say they're organized because this is probably why I get hate mail from them. I don't think they could organize the two-person parade, but they're intense and they're out there, and it's dismal on
Oh,
some
I
level.
mean, I think they are organized. Not necessarily, not organized in the way that, say, progressive people or people believing in
Yeah,
progressive things organize. We organize, and I include myself in this because I've done a lot of organizational stuff and organizing work. We organize in ways to kind of amplify multiple voices into a single unified message. It seems like the folks who are, these folks are, not to give them a positive term, but fiercely independent would be the terminology that I suppose they would use for themselves, and therefore, but also organize around kind of strongman politics.
true.
They like a good strongman, a good leadership, quote unquote, which is kind of where the gateway to fascism comes in. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, I find, but uh, to be fair, to the organizational level that they have, which I think mostly consists of shouting loudly and breaking things, um,
Yes.
is to be fair, we just had a vote in Philadelphia that was about safe injection sites or opioid use,
Yeah.
overdose prevention sites, whatever you want to call them, OPS, SIS,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them. We just had a vote in Philadelphia City Council. One of the council members that, the one that is, so I could probably go on for hours about this, and not to drag it out. The city council right now is primarily composed of people who got their positions on city council because other people removed themselves from city council in order to run for mayor.
Okay.
The person who proposed this bill and led the fight for the bill is the interim council mayor for the district that includes Kensington, which is kind of the heart of the opioid epidemic, where one of the largest bases of public display of use is, and also, whether rightly or wrongly, an area where the Philadelphia Police Department and Philadelphia services kind of pushed much of the opioid use and the homeless population into this area so that they could better deal with and or identify that
Yeah.
community. Um, one of the things I'll say real quick, yes, if there are homeless people on your block, they are your neighbors, and opioid users are still your neighbors, regardless of whether or not you condone their opioid use. They're people, just like you and me, and that's more to my audience and some folks that I know that hate watch me. Um, uh,
Hate watching's good. Having people that hate watch is a good thing.
I mean, I hope, I hope so. Look, there's some folks that I talk to that are conservative. A lot of folks that are conservative, even like modern version of conservative, like to talk to me. I just interviewed the Republican mayoral candidate last week,
I saw that. I saw what you said.
and because I understand, like, I get it. We're all trying to do the same things. We all want a better community. We want services. We want our neighbors to feel comfortable. We want a successful place to live. We want a nice, clean street with, nice people living next to us. How we get there is a completely different argument, and that's where we often run into things. And so, like, some folks that are conservative, they're like, I get it. I like talking to you, James, because you're reasonable. I'm like, I'm not reasonable. I'm just, I get where you're coming from, but how hard-headed do you have to be to not understand that an opioid prevention site or a safe injection site is exactly what you're looking for, what you're asking for, what you've been demanding. You've been demanding that these people get off your street. You've been demanding that these people get off drugs. You've been demanding that they stop leaving needles on the street, stop using in front of your kids.
Yeah.
That's what an SIS is.
Yeah.
Like, where do you want, what do you want? We just handed you the solution, and then you go and vote against it. You go and 14-1 vote that safe injection sites are now not permitted under Philadelphia zoning code. Ah.
That's there's a lot of contradictory um, illogical responses to initiatives like you just described. There just is. And not to, but time at homelessness and injections. This was back in the 90s in Kansas, of all places. I was on the board of an agency that worked with homeless people and different types of economically disadvantaged individuals. But one of the and this nonprofit building property was owned by the Catholic Church. And the executive director was this real dynamite person. I'm going to throw out one more name, not just going to be anything to your audience or, Marge Roberts. And she passed away 25 years ago, something like that. But she came up with the idea, and this is to combat AIDS. People were reusing needles, injecting whatever the drug of choice, and I'm trying to be cavalier about it, whatever the drug of choice was during that slice of history. But she was able to go to the Archbishop of this Catholic diocese and say, look, I won't mention it if you'll let us do it. And he let her operate 2 days a week, a needle exchange on the property. And the reason I mention that is the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church, and it certainly has its own, prejudices. And but the fact that a very progressive thinking person who ran this agency recognized the problem in the community with people dying because they were using contaminated needles, certainly getting ill in some instances, but she was able to work with someone that's definitely in a different lane than she was in, and they made something work out. And again, that's an old, I haven't thought about that in 20 some years, but you point out how people just don't do or don't are not mindful of what a good solution is. But even when maybe some natural people with not a natural affinity, they can work together and figure something out, even if they have to do a little bit quietly sometimes. But I just want to throw that out. Thank you for letting me do that.
No, yeah, no. I mean, that's a great example. And what I don't maybe it's a modern politics thing. Um, what I don't understand is why we've gotten into this area where we suddenly pick sides on even things like wearing a suit in the Senate.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah, yeah,
I don't care if John Fetterman stands like 6'7" or something like that. It takes a good portion, probably takes a good portion of his budget to even like buy the hoodies and shorts that he
yeah,
buys, much
yeah,
less like getting suits which are going to have to be handmade because he stands 6'7".
yeah,
Where are you gonna
yeah,
find a suit for a 6'7" guy off the rack? I can find suits off the rack because I stand 5'11" and I can literally walk into a store and buy a
yeah.
suit. But anyway, why?
And,
Why? Go ahead.
just to throw in with Senator Fetterman, and I mean, using the Capitol, Congress is literally on fire right now.
Right.
Maybe a little bit more in the House than the Senate at this current size, but it just there was one of the ladies, one of the women in the Senate meeting. She said, that we have all. This was during when they were trying to get a continuing resolution passed, and she said, you know what, my colleagues are more concerned whether or not I wear a sleeveless dress on the floor of the Senate. And she's right. A lot of them were. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I can't find it real quick, but I know I quoted it in my Twitter. Quote tweeted it. But there is a clip of one of the members of the House, just out. I think it was during the impeachment hearing, um,
Uh,
and she's saying how it took over a decade for this, over a decade for that, over a decade, or we're still waiting on the ERA, the Equal Rights
yeah,
Amendment,
yeah,
and it took 3 days to create a resolution because John Fetterman wanted to wear shorts on the floor of the
yeah,
Senate.
yeah,
Where are the priorities? We've got a continuing resolution that expires in what, 40 days now.
yeah.
Where are the priorities? Is it funding the country? Is it, are you? I will. I'm happy that people want to argue about whether or not funding for the Ukraine's war against Russia is valid. I'm perfectly happy for people to have that argument. But you need to have the argument, then figure out something from that argument. Like,
Yeah.
figure out whatever it is you're arguing about, at least get to that point. Because right now, the only thing I can figure that you're arguing about is whether or not you're supporting Russia.
Yeah,
And once you have the argument, then have a vote and figure out, representative democracy. We live in a representative democracy. Well, sometimes it's a representative. It's not very representative all the times. But
right, right.
we figure out what your constituents want and then vote. Like, don't hold up the funding for the rest of the nation. The Don't hold up the benefits for social security recipients. Don't hold up, uh for God's sakes, please stop holding up promotions in the military just because you don't agree with
Yeah,
funding travel for people seeking abortions.
yeah.
What In any past era, that guy would have been run out of town.
He would have. By people in both
Yeah.
parties. It just it's extraordinary, and yeah, it's just well, and and more reason. I think Matt Gaetz, Congressman Gaetz, he and his gang of whatever um, issues. I don't even know if they take real positions on issues, but that wouldn't have occurred that way. It just, and I'm not a fan of Speaker McCarthy.
No,
Uh,
I'm not either, but you have we're literally being held hostage by
Not
people
bingo.
who being held hostage by people who literally, quite vocally, have said they want to dismantle the government. They want the
Burn the
government
place down.
not to be functional, not to exist.
And they've accomplished that, at least for the next. I guess the Republicans. I'm not trying to make us. The Republicans have gone home for a week. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they need to go to their corners. I don't know, but they have. I mean, he's accomplished it, at least for a short period of time. But he and his cohorts will come back, and I, 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 I evidently am speechless at the moment. And
I,
I don't know what to say. It's just crazy.
I
It's
I've
crazy.
been speechless for going on, probably 10, 15 years now. I'm
Yeah,
one of my best friends growing up, very conservative guy, nice guy. Started following Ted Cruz when he was running for state office, and just
yeah,
drifted further and further from what
yeah,
I recognize as reality. Like, I
yeah,
at some point I literally said to him, like, dude, you're living in a different reality than me. I can't. I can't do it.
yeah,
I can't, and I don't want to end a friendship like that, but if you live in a different version of reality, I don't know what else to
yeah.
do.
This is the first. I mean, my political memory goes back to, I can remember when Martin Luther King and John Kennedy were assassinated.
Hmm.
So my civic and societal memory goes back to that. But from that point forward, I've seen there's a lot of Vietnam War, more assassinations, etc. But this is the first time in my lifetime, and maybe in a couple hundred years, where people can't even agree on obvious facts, concrete fact. Like, I mean, I don't, I'm not trying to single them out or I'll start getting hate. I have gotten hate mail from them now that I think about it. People who believe the earth is flat. I don't know how. Yeah, I do. I mentioned this in some podcast or something once, and I got 3 or 4 hate emails from flat earthers. That was an interesting experience. I mean, I was stupid, but my point is, eh, that's just factually, there's no two sides to that.
No, no. I mean, like the flat earthers even proved that the Earth is spherical when they tried to disprove it. But yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, and all of the other, not to, I know we're not here to talk about, but my favorite thing about the flat earthers is they have a thing they show, an image, and Earth is flat, but all the other planets are round.
around. Yeah,
Only the Earth is flat.
I don't know. I don't know.
But
Just,
that's just there's, it's
I
like,
mean, what would be interesting if flat earthers were like, well, like they came at it from a different angle, like a scientific angle, like saying like, okay, the everything looks spherical to us, but it's in reality not spherical. It's
yeah,
like the
yeah,
space time continuum doesn't.
something,
Yeah,
yeah.
anything would be great.
Anything, it's not, and it's just, and then I'm a pretty heavy consumer of news. And some's better than, I mean, I get it. It's not, news has always been imperfect. I mean, yellow journalism was kind of the birth of some of the modern newspapers in the country, and I get it. But I sit there and I'm listening to people being interviewed, and and I don't consider myself unintelligent. And these people that are denying facts are saying these things are so convoluted. I'm sitting there listening, and I can't even figure out what their rationale is. And so I finally got to the conclusion that they have themselves so confused they don't know what the heck's going on.
um,
These are different times, that's for sure.
not and
And if I get hate mail from the flat earthers, I'll forward it to
Okay,
you.
no, I'd appreciate it because
Yeah.
to me, I have been assuming that most flat earthers are just doing performance art in a really long format.
Yeah,
That's all
maybe
I got.
so. It
Like
might be.
that's how I save my sanity. I can't process that.
It's a hard one. It's a, not to get too far subject, but there was, I don't know, it has a terminology, and I don't know what the term, it has an identifier, a title, but there's some school of thought, and I'm not discounting this one like I discount the flat earthers, but there's some school of thought, the universe and multi-dimensional and ultraverses and all that, but that we're something of a computerized
Oh,
something.
we're a simulation.
Simulation. Thank you. I knew there was some word for that. And that it went on the blink a couple of years ago, and they haven't knocked the side of the machine. There's
It'd be great
unplugged
if
it and plugged
if
it back in.
somebody would, yeah, if you
Yeah,
could reboot this whole thing, that would be wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Josh Kruger. I don't know if you know of him. He's a been Philadelphia, well-known Philadelphia institution. For the past several years, he was murdered on Monday, and a lot of folks have been um, expressing their condolences and their thoughts. I did not have the opportunity to work directly with Josh other than in his role as a spokesperson for the Office of Homeless Services. I believe I did run into him on occasion there, but I never ran into him as a reporter. Um, why I bring Josh up is because like oftentimes when we start talking about these things, we talk about how like media has created or contributed to this kind of dialectic of there is a right and a wrong, there's this or that, or even, like sometimes we talk about media platforming people who shouldn't have a platform. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm going to say, for the most part, the advances in media, the ability for people to publish themselves, like I'm, one guy in my house essentially. I've spent a lot of money to set up this setup, and I have a lot of skills to be able to do this, but go back to the 70s, go back to the 80s, even go back to the 90s, I wouldn't be able to do this. The most I
Right.
could do
Right.
then was, like write a zine. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, what I would say that the advances in publishing, getting more people's voices in the room, is always a good thing, or trends towards good. What is the line of justice? Trends towards good. Um, I think that in the long run, more people being able to get their viewpoint out to more people will be a good thing. I think that
Yeah.
leads to a general personification of everybody that you run into. So, like you and I are talking about safe injection sites. I don't know your personal history. I'm not a drug user. I've never been a drug user. Um, and that's not to say it in a negative or a positive way. It's just fact. I don't, like the most drug I've ever used is alcohol.
Yeah.
And so when you have somebody like Josh, who was an HIV positive gay man, he lived through homelessness, he lived through addiction, and somebody like that without a degree in journalism, um, is able to weigh in and get his voice out there in the media and is recognized for his writing, his abilities. I think that's a good thing. I think that we need that. And so, like I hope that we can, as we proceed as a society, we can kind of scale back this kind of negative about media, and just really get the people who should be platformed, and get the, like that's one of the reasons I do this in the first place. I like to, you know bring folks like you on, and folks who don't necessarily get the opportunity to talk about things, the opportunity to talk about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Josh will be sorely missed. I noticed today that the police department has identified a person of interest. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have a suspect, but the at least um, the police department and the district attorney's office, etc., are all working at pulling the same oar for once. Um, um, yeah, one of the last things Josh was talking about on social media. Um, uh, I'm just gonna pull up his Twitter here, and his
Oh,
Twitter is
good.
still public. Go ahead.
No, no, I said, oh, good that you're pulling it up.
Yeah. One of the last things he was talking about, other than he was talking about the difficulties of dating in the modern world, but um,
Uh,
and he's also was recognized enough and had enough followers that he has a blue check on Twitter. Um, But one of the other things, one of the last things he was tweeting about was the a couple of things. He was talking about homelessness. Um, he was a very big activist in public housing, but from what's the word? Like philanthropy standpoint,
Okay.
philanthropic standpoint. And he was also very anti developer, which is a big problem here in the city of Philadelphia.
I'm
Um,
in Denver and it's the same thing here. I just thought I'd chime in there.
yeah, I mean, it seems to
Uh,
be the problem everywhere.
yeah, just
Certain things, and I think the line really is if it's essential to life in general, just
yeah,
don't work in a capitalist economy. But and I'm by no means a communist or socialist or any of the words that we throw around for people who believe in social social good.
fairness, social fairness.
Yeah. I I this company is for profit. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I
Yeah.
entirely understand how money works. Um I just I just think like, when you hold something over somebody's head, like, either you pay nearly $1 million for a roof over your head or you're homeless. Well, I'm gonna have to figure out how to pay him nearly $1 million to put a roof over my head, I guess. Like there's no choices there. That's not really a choice. Either you pay me, your next lifetime's worth of salary, or you die.
Yeah.
Okay, you know. So he was, and then just before that, he had wrapped up some tweeting about the safe injection sites, and the reason I bring this up is because all of these issues are very, 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 very tied together.
Yeah.
Um, they're not one-offs. They're not. They don't live in a vacuum from each other. They aren't a mystery of like, like where did this come from? Um, I,
Yeah.
I mean, they're just all tied together, and I often don't understand. So, the series lately has been about the top things that are important to Philadelphia voters as of a survey done back before the Democratic primary in Philadelphia. And the reason why I keep using that list is because it's probably still holds true. These things don't change. But we're up to homelessness, and homelessness is like third on the list. The number one is crime, but
Yeah.
if you look at homelessness as an issue, if you look at drug use as an issue, if you look at infrastructure as an issue, these are all tied together. If you end homelessness, people are secure. If they're secure, they don't commit crime.
Yeah.
If they have a home to go to use their drugs, they will.
Yeah.
You're not going to have people just using out on the street if they have some place to use that is comfortable for them, safe, um, a place that they call home.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would just interject in that if they, yeah, if they're, you know, able to have a place to call home and they use drugs, having that, at least that one basic essential need met might give them an opportunity to use that as a platform to maybe explore solving the reasons why they are using drugs. And I don't want to sound like I'm pontificating, but it's giving at least that basic need met.
right. You only have so many hours in the day. I mean, a lot of us
Oh
complain
yeah,
about it. a lot of us experience it. You only have so many hours in a day.
Mhm.
What, and a lot of us experience that as burnout. Imagine having a condition or anything else, even if it's a hobby that you enjoy. Like I enjoy sailing. It's a hobby, but it takes time.
Yeah,
Where do I clear out the hours of the day for that hobby? Where do what do I sacrifice? If your hobby is not a hobby but keeping yourself alive,
surviving.
yeah, is
Yeah.
surviving. How do you clear out the hours of the day to face the problems that you have to uh improve your education enough to get a better job, to
Mhm.
um, deal with inspecting your car, to
Yeah.
um, get more money, to be more comfortable, to take care of your children, take care of your loved ones, what have you. These
Yeah.
all tied together. And so what I was gonna segue to here is from 2009 to 2014, the city of Philadelphia paid out 40, what is that, million $669,044.33 in police misconduct lawsuit settlements. That's not including some of the more recent ones. Obviously, this ends in 2014, which is before the George Floyd, I don't even know what to call it, protests,
Yeah.
before the deaths of very publicized deaths of wrongful deaths of three black men in Philadelphia, one after another. Before this most recent death of a black man in under 10 seconds from the police officer exiting his car, which they've organized a civil suit for, but that civil suit is going to be paid out of the Philadelphia budget, so we
Yeah.
all pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And perhaps people don't understand or empathize with the words defund the police, but this is what a lot of defund the police people mean. Why are we spending $40 million in 5 years?
Yeah.
How might $40 million, 10 million a year, well, a little less than 10, 6 million a year, let's say, impact the homelessness problem in
Yeah.
Philadelphia? Could you house all the homeless? That's supposedly somewhere around 3,000 individuals for $6 million a year.
Yeah.
Probably, probably.
Yeah. In some, I bet so. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, yet
Yeah.
we spend this money. We spent in my discussion with David O, we talked about the quote unquote defund the police bill that the city council passed during the height of the George Floyd protests, which ended up not being a defund the police bill. And I pointed it out, but I want to make it more explicit how that works. The defund the police bill simply told the mayor's office that the city council wasn't agreeing as a council to give the police 14 million more dollars in the next fiscal year into their budget. It cut an increase of their budget. It just eliminated the increase and kept the increase from happening. 2 weeks later, not even, I don't even remember, but 2 weeks later, um, there was the shooting incident, during which it was found that, it was publicized that not all Philadelphia Police Department officers carry tasers when out on duty, that only some of them are trained in the use of tasers, and that we didn't own enough tasers as a department to supply every officer with a taser. And then immediately, the answer from city council was to pledge $14 million
Um,
to the police department. I mean, come on. I
I,
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think I do live in a simulation, because these things, you couldn't write them. You get
no.
you get laughed out of the room.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And and then again, the defund the police. If folks took a moment, it it really is redirecting some funding, broadening mental health assistance, et cetera, getting different people involved in the process rather than folks running around with guns strapped to their hips. Uh, but yeah, it's 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 hard to watch the way some of these things are playing out.
Yeah.
I mean, in Denver, we had a pretty robust protest regarding George Floyd. And what happened here, probably in a lot of, well, I know in places, was the protests would occur, and then the protesters would go home about sunset, and then folks were coming in and just wreaking havoc. It had nothing to do with the protest, and it all gets painted with the same brush.
Oh yeah,
And
no, the quote unquote demise or fall of Democrat-led cities has
oh
been.
God, it just I live in a Democratic-led city,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
we had the same Democratic governor for 12, or excuse me, the same Democratic mayor for 12 years, and we have a new Democratic mayor that got elected this earlier this year.
I mean, not to not to say Democrats are above above reproach. Definitely,
No,
there's definitely a lot of questionable Democrats, especially in Democrat-led cities,
yeah,
because
that's
you
true,
get a lot of people running as Democrats who aren't really Democrats. Um,
right?
you get folks like Mayor Adams in New York who just I couldn't.
I can't figure him out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, no. I mean, I can't figure him out either. I can't find a better Republican in the Republican Party, and he's a Democrat.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And people on social media talk about him like he's a left-wing lunatic, and I'm like, what Mayor
no,
Adams are you
you're
experiencing?
talking about, yeah. But that
um,
goes back to the whole thing about facts. I
right,
mean, you can look at him and listen to what he's saying, and if you're seriously doing that, you can evaluate what he's saying and not slap a nonsensical label on
right. What true Democrat
him.
is going to be okay with spending? I think these things cost like 1.5 million each. A lot of money for a robot that is a glorified Roomba with cameras on it to
Yeah,
patrol Times Square Station. What
yeah,
actual Democrat is okay with that?
yeah. Well, you know what actual thinking person is. Yeah, yeah. We had I for a while I lived in there's a University of Denver there. I used to live in that neighborhood, and for a while they had these little robots going around, and I guess they were for security. I thought they were some sort of food delivery device, but yeah, it's crazy sometimes.
We have had that exact same robot. The Night Systems is the brand name.
Okay.
And we've had that exact same robot patrolling our local Lowe's home improvement store for about 2 years now. And I was talking to the guy who does maintenance on them, and he was like, "Yeah, it's usually over here by the building because it gets stuck in the middle of the parking lot, and then it has to go home and then sit on the charger before it can go out again."
Oh, jeez.
Um, I just want to recognize the time. It's 3:07. I don't want to hold you up. If you have someplace to go, I didn't get to talk about the TWU strike or the Lectern. Um, uh, just if you have any thoughts, one of the things that I wanted to say with regards to the TWU strike is I think the increase, I would say, in union activity, the efforts that unions and all kinds of group negotiations are making is both laudable and I think a symptom of the same thing. I think that people are feeling insecure, therefore, they're seeking redress to those issues however they can. Um, the Transit Workers Union Local 234 runs SEPTA trolleys here,
Mhm.
and they're considering a strike. Um, and just like every other negotiation, as of late, it's difficult to get
Yeah.
people to agree. Like how much do workers need? How much do producers or bosses need to be able to continue doing their work?
Mhm.
How much can I afford to pay? Well, I can only afford to pay. I got this recently. Like I put out a call for a big labor contract, and I got the client up to basically $35 an hour for my guys, and I got pushback from one of the other labor organizers in Philly, and he was like, "Hey, like down in DC, we're at 50 an hour for that same thing." I'm like,
Yeah.
like there's only so much I can do on,
Yeah.
I'm the guy in the middle here. We can not have the contract, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
And then on the 20K lectern, I thought you would find it funny because you've done national politics. The 20K lectern is the bill that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, as governor, has submitted for a lectern that she purchased for the governor's office. Um, and
Yes.
the lectern is very clearly not worth $20,000. I've actually had a plexiglass lectern built, and that didn't even cost $20,000.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I, not to pick on Mike Huckabee blocked me on Twitter, but that's neither here nor there. But I don't know if Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but I get it. Arkansas, it's a state that the Huckabees are popular, but I was like, really, when they elected her governor, a little bit surprising to me because I don't I she has never struck me as being particularly thoughtful, innovative, intelligent, and perhaps has a void when it comes to common sense. And now, of course, there's some Huckabee Sanders loyalists who might send me, just, I had heard about the election. I was familiar with that. And it's just another moment when I'm shaking my head about Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
I mean, like, you gotta realize when you're not popular, right?
I would think. I don't know. Maybe I would think so. I don't know.
And when you're not popular, you kind of gotta do things a little bit more carefully, at least
Yeah,
as far as I understand. Like, that's why, like, I realize I'm not the most popular person in the room all the time. That's why I
yeah,
kind of like, I make sure all my ducks are in the row. Like, I get licensing for things that I do, and, I get
yeah,
insurance, and I just make sure, if I'm submitting my taxes, like these things actually go in these categories that they're supposed to
yeah,
be. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know. Like, it's like the Trumps. Like, not to. I mean, not to beat a dead horse or whatever version of that phrase you want to
It's like
use.
it's the horse that won't die. So I
Right.
don't think you're beating a dead horse when it comes to the Trumps.
Like,
It's
but
just
how are you gonna sit there? The entire world is looking at your finances.
yeah,
And you can do everything you possibly want to try and hide them.
yeah,
Somebody's gonna find them out. Somebody.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's lesser people than you that have been with less juicy information that have been found out. Like
Oh yeah.
you're not going to avoid this. So like why are you trying?
And while it was still kind of shrouded, they were lying about it. And now it's out there, they're still lying about it.
Yeah, and
It's
and
like that whole thing, it's
and then it wasn't even Eric. who I consider the dumb one of the group.
He's
Um,
the dumb one. Yeah.
but what's the younger
The younger boy,
yeah, the smarter one?
Baron, the one
No, no,
that's
not
not.
Not Baron.
No, I was gonna say the one that's not an adult.
Not the one that's not an adult
Oh,
yet. Um,
there's Donald Jr.
Don Jr. Yeah, Donald
Yeah,
Jr. was the one who literally, after the judge in New York found that yes, they've point of fact been
law and
inflating.
fact. Yeah,
Point of fact, legal fact. This is a
yeah,
finding of fact. I've
yeah,
found factually that the Trump organization has been inflating and deflating the numbers on their property values illegally and committing fraud. And
yeah.
then Donald Trump Jr. goes out and immediately tweets an inflated number for the value of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw. It's it. I don't know. I don't get it. I think I don't know. Again, it's sort of one of those terms I can't recall. But there's something about collective insanity, and maybe that's what goes on in the Trump household, or maybe it's genetic. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I can't. It's inexplicable. I don't know.
I'm at a loss, and I probably will be, probably for the rest of my life. I've got nothing. I've really got no point of reference on this version of reality that some people experience, and I
No.
wish I did, but I don't.
Mm, mm-mm.
Any last thoughts? I'm gonna get us out of here. Any last thoughts? Anything you want the audience to know? They can come see your show in New York.
Yeah.
Any other things like that you want folks to know?
No, that would. Yeah, I've enjoyed being here today. Thanks for the plug for the play. The play is well, it's on the poster thing for the show.
And Meg will post
Yeah,
the link to it in our chats.
perfect. And yeah, and it's yeah. So if folks would like to come, and again, this actor just does. He's just does a phenomenal job. And I say that with thought. I don't run around if I've written a play, I don't run around saying, "Oh, that actor, wonderful," because there are times when I've sat in a play that I've written, I'm like, what the hell is going on here?" So but this guy just hits it home. So he's worth seeing.
Awesome. Thank you so
But thank you
much.
again.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
being with us. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
go to one up of me. Not because I like to see my
Yep.
face, but so that I can outro the show. And
Yep.
if you'd like to stick around and have a little bit more chat, I have a couple minutes. If you gotta go, you can go. But thank you again for being a guest, and feel free to join us again anytime.
I have to go. I have to run, but I would appreciate maybe another time. I've enjoyed talking to you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest
Thanks.
of your
Have a
day.
good day. Thanks again.
And thank you, audience members, for joining us today and every week as you do. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate that you come and see our show, take note of what we have to say and the things going on in the world. We hope to bring you information from a unique viewpoint. All of our guests, the most they get to prepare for the show is when I post the topics, usually the day before. So you're getting kind of unvarnished opinion and really, hopefully, the voices of people that you haven't necessarily heard before. And if you like that, if you like to see what we bring you, if you'd like to help keep us going, keep these broadcasts going, get more guests, more information, give us more resources. The easiest way to do that is to subscribe to us on social media. And then also, consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/Late Thief Productions. You've seen the link up on the screen before. And you can donate as little as $1 a month. And you can help us out, give us resources that way. Also, consider just commenting, liking, subscribing. That gets us more resources, gets the video out, shared more. gets more audience, and the more audience we get, the more resources we have, and the more information we get. So tune in again next week, folks. Really appreciate your time. Hope everyone has a great rest of your week. See you next week, everyone.